Hi, Eric. Are you there?
I'll step in for now, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Koziel. Eric Auskerson, our host, will be joining us in a moment. And I would like to welcome you to this week's Town Hall Series. We're going to move on, earning CPE. This is the typical slide that you see each week, how to earn your CPE credits. We ask that you disable all pop-up blockers. If you enlarge windows, they can block you from seeing the CPE markers that come along. So just be aware of that in case you open up a window like the Q&A screen or the slide screen to be bigger. You may, in fact, miss out on seeing that, the CPE markers that you need to do to get that credit. Any answer?
Hey, Mark, I'm back here, so sorry about that. Something happened.
That's all right. I'm just finishing up on the CPE slide, and I'll turn it back over to you, Eric. So clicking on the CPE button at the end of the webcast, followed by a certificate to claim your CPE credit. So with that, we are joined by Eric Auskerson, who traditionally kicks us off. I will turn it over to Eric to introduce today's presenters. Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I don't know if someone was trying to send me a message there, but welcome again, and we've got a great show for you today. I'm Eric Auskerson, the CEO and President of CPA.com, AICPA's business and technology subsidiary. With me is Mark Koziel, who you just were hearing from. He leads the firm's services area, and you all know him very well. We're thrilled to have Gene Marks with us, who I know most of you are very familiar with. He's one of the leading business consultants in the marketplace, always is speaking on TV shows, a very prolific writer, also a CPA, and also runs a small firm. And he's going to give us some great perspective on lessons learned through the pandemic, and he's also going to talk with us about many of the current issues related to these business relief activities. And finally, we've got Lisa Simpson, and her team has been building these invaluable resources over the past couple of months, and she's going to share with you some of our latest guidance. So here's our agenda. We're going to start off with a recap of the past town halls and some of our top questions. So take a look at those top questions before you start submitting questions via the Q&A feature. We'll kind of cover a couple of broad status update areas, talk about the latest with the policymakers, and then we're going to get into an open forum session with Gene. So first off, here's a recap of our past 4 town halls. So you can see that we've been very, very focused on loan forgiveness. At the start of the month, we actually did a deep dive into EIDL in the Main Street Lending Program, and we're going to be talking about this later today. Next week, we're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into the employee retention credit and some of the other tax credits. Lisa, is there anything else you'd like to highlight on this slide? One thing I do want to note is that you can watch all of these on AICPA TV, and you can find that link right on our overall PPP Resource Center page. So, Lisa?
I think you hit the highlights. Just, again, you'll find the details there, listen to the archives, and if you missed a session, you can catch up. Thanks.
Lisa, I'll let you cover the FAQ section here.
Yeah, so what we've tried to do is highlight some of the questions that we see coming through the chat after each week's session, and we wanted to try to categorize them so you can take a quick look, identify the potential question that you've got, and look to see where we've got the answer for you. So some of those you're going to see are starred as being part of our AICPA-generated FAQs. That FAQ document is in your attendee materials, so you can download that. You can also find a link to them. The ones on our site don't have numbers, so that's why it might be easier for you to use the ones you can download, but you can also find them on our site at aicpa.org/SBA. We've gotten a lot of idle questions as well, so we have a new resource that compares idle to PPP to the Main Street Lending Program, and you'll see a link to that resource as well. So those are the ones that we have answers for. And then if we click to the next slide, we've generated a list of the questions that we're still looking for some responses on. So we do not currently have the SBA's definition of who an owner-employee is. So we're still waiting on that one. You'll see these are, again, the common questions that we get that we're just going to respond with, still awaiting guidance. So lots of great questions, and we hope to be able to whittle this list down in the coming weeks. The last one is what's going on with the status of legislation to allow borrowers to deduct expenses paid with a PPP loan. And, you know, we still think that it's maybe 50-50 to get that legislation passed, but right now there is no legislative vehicle to get that moving through Congress. So it is still definitely on our radar, but no concrete update for you at this time.
Well, thanks, Lisa, and definitely take a look at that FAQ list and those summary points prior to giving us the questions via Q&A. But we do learn a lot through those Q&A submissions, and we will leverage them for the open forum. So just talking a little bit about where we're at. We've been doing this for the past 100 days. We've talked about what these past 100 days have meant. Many firms have stated, you know, this concept of 10 years of relationships were built in the last 100 days. What we're really beginning to think about now, and we're going to be talking to Jean about, is the opportunity in the next 100 days, the opportunity in the second half of 2020. And you're going to have to focus on the forgiveness process and getting that done. And there's going to be a lot of tools to support that. But just as importantly, there's going to be so much opportunity to have discussions with your client around their business model, around opportunities that happen when there's massive disruption. There's going to be opportunities for some clients to do some M&A activities. There may be situations where you have to help a client through bankruptcy. So it's going to be just as important of a time in the next 6 months as it was in this previous 3 months. And it's going to be important for us all to be very agile and to anticipate, you know, what is happening in the marketplaces. And one thing that we've been saying quite frequently is that 2020 is the new 2025. And this slide highlights the why. Why is that? The technology really hasn't changed. What's changed overnight is the adoption curve. There's been a massive acceleration in adoption of these technology tools. And you're seeing that with the massive growth of things like Zoom. We're seeing it, and we're well aware of it, in the client accounting services space. Cloud accounting tools, cloud bill payment, cloud payroll, those are now table stakes. Those are musts for a firm to be able to have in their arsenal to support their clients. So this is opportunity for firms, and there's opportunity for businesses and the profession in general to operate differently. So let's just now talk a little bit about what's going on with the different stakeholders. It's been another busy week. We're having continued discussions with Treasury and SBA, and we did state in the special edition town hall on July 1st that we really thought the FAQs were going to be coming out, and the reason we thought that is because we were told that. But things do change in Washington, D.C., and they did the big release of all the applicant data. We're not saying that delayed the FAQs, but the FAQs have been delayed. We've got, you know, questions into Treasury on that, and we suspect that final guidance to come out shortly. So that's the update there. And what we're also getting quite active with is the payroll providers and the lenders. Both of those communities are really working quite actively to put together some reports, compliance reports from the payroll community, and tools from the lender community to support the forgiveness phase, and we're going to talk more about that today. So here's the latest numbers. Not a lot of movement. 4.9 million small business loans. 521 billion is the total loan amount, and we all know that they extended the PPP deadline until August 8th. That actually happened the night of July 1st, the day of our last town hall. So there's still a lot of funding left, and we're going to be talking about that and talking about, you know, some of the needs in the marketplace for some small businesses to still take advantage of that have not taken advantage of it yet. So let's talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C. There's a number of discussions that are going on. First and foremost, it's all about the big release of the applicant information and what a number of the senators and leaders in the House are stating about some recipients who, you know, probably did not need a PPP loan. So a lot of media stories around that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The other things that are going on are discussions about the Phase 2 PPP program, and there's a lot of bipartisan support for that. As we said last week, there's clearly going to be some criteria around how you will qualify for that. There'll be criteria such as you'll have had to have had a certain amount of revenue decline. So the eligibility will be more difficult. It's not a guarantee that there'll be a PPP Phase 2, but it's looking likely. And it's also looking likely that there's going to be some type of broad business relief legislation passed towards the end of July, early August. That will probably have some, liability safeguards related to the coronavirus and other elements in it as well. Mark, I'll let you comment on the status of the deductibility related to the PPP program.
Great. Yep. And, and this will also carry into the conversation we'll have in a minute or two around not-for-profits and what happens with not-for-profit programs. But generally, the deductibility, as we know it today, still those expenses are not deductible. We are encouraged. Lisa mentioned 50-50 chance. We would have said a 90% chance back about, even 2 weeks ago. That the deductibility legislation would easily get through. There is bipartisan support to get this done. There are members on both sides of the parties, the Republicans and Democrats, who want to see this, but there's also a little bit of bipartisan opposition as well. And so this is going to be debated, we believe, as part of this Phase 2, PPP Phase 2 or a Phase 4 business relief bill. Whatever that bill towards the end of July, we are hopeful that some level of deductibility is included in that, but I'm sure that's going to be a negotiating chip as with the rest of what will happen with that. And then as far as the July 15th deadline, it sounds like, and I'm sure we're way late for this now, but it does sound like it's going to stick. We had mentioned that last week. The IRS came out with that. We don't see any last-minute changes to that right now. But then again, as D.C. is D.C., anything can change, but we would say fairly doubtful. We would ask that firms continue on like July 15th is going to be it, get those extensions done, and then work toward getting to the October or September 15th deadline, not October. We realize it's been a really, really tough tax season, the tax season that won't end. And we'd like to see a little bit of closure to that ourselves. Eric?
Thanks, Mark. So let's just real quickly talk about what you've all been seeing in the media. It's all about the applicant information, and there's also articles about, the additional relief, and they're somewhat intertwined, as Mark just stated. Here, the headline from the political article is Congress worry of future aid as well-connected business people rake in millions. And we've got a picture here of the Eagles and them getting a PPP loan. But what we want to talk about, and I'm going to bring Gene into the discussion now, is let's just keep some perspective here. And I think it's important for the 44,000 firms to keep this perspective. When you look back at this historic program, the PPP program supported 51 million out of the 60 million small business jobs as defined by the U.S. Census. And it really put a stop to the employment losses and really changed drove the improvements to the unemployment rate in May and June. And yes, there's been issues. It's a program of this magnitude. There's always going to be issues. Technology glitches at the start, some lack of clarity on the guidance. We still need more clarity on the guidance today. And when you have 4.9 million applicants, you're always going to have some unintended consequences with recipients. But what we've been talking about is, from the first week in April, is how the firms play a very critical role with their clients on having that self-assessment of need discussion, documenting what the situation was when the client made those decisions. So, Gene, I'm going to bring you in. You've got just tremendous media background, so you understand, the media cycle, and I know you're also, thinking about this from a firm and client standpoint. So let's hear your perspective.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, first of all, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when you consider what's been done with the Paycheck Protection Program, it's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, I give a lot of credit to Senator Rubio, who chaired the Senate Small Business Committee, where this was back in middle of March as things were really sort of hitting the fan. The committee really stepped up into action, and they were the ones that crafted this legislation and made it part of the CARES Act. And like you said, it has been, very successful in my opinion. It has had many bumps and still has some challenges, but it's been a very, very successful program. That doesn't mean that it's not being politicized, Eric. I mean, this is sort of a Senate-led thing, so it's a Republican-led thing. So obviously the opposition is going to, try and take their digs where they can. And one of the easiest things for us in the media to write about is any type of violations or people taking advantage. And we've had a few phases of that. We've had a lot of us writing about the banks that weren't stepping up to get the money out back in the early days of the program. And then it turned out they were favoring their more wealthier clients. And then it turned out there were some wealthy companies that didn't need the money that were taking the money, and the government had to step in, the Treasury Department, and wag their finger and ask them to give them some time to put the money back, which many did, but many didn't. And now here we are with this disclosure of latest data of certain companies. You're right, like the Eagles, my beloved Eagles, Kanye West, other organizations that they're out there in the public domain, and they took this money and they were likely within the rules of taking it, but did they have other resources? Yeah, they probably did. And unfortunately, they didn't take advantage of those. They took taxpayer money instead, and that makes for a juicy story for us that write about it. We were talking earlier about I have a piece that came out in the Hill today where I've just been asking the question, geez, there's still $138 billion left that has not been lent out. So it's not as if these people have taken money away from starving business owners that needed the money. As it turns out, I don't know, it seems like, it's almost like demand has been exhausted, which is why they've extended the program to August 8th. So Congress really needs to take a look at what's left, whether they use that and add more to it. And I think they have to have a more targeted approach as to how those funds can be used to really help the small businesses that are in need. And I think we're going to be hearing more about that over the next few weeks.
Yeah, you're right, Gene. So PPP2, they'll definitely make sure that it's the businesses that are in need. And we know there's a lot of businesses, and I've spoken to you about that need a second funding, so another forgivable loan. Just one last question, and then we'll move on from this topic of the loan applicant information. But how would you, 99.5% of the businesses out there aren't famous like the ones you mentioned, and but there could still be questions that come in to some of these clients. Any advice on how to just manage that dialogue if there is a question to your client?
Yeah, actually, for my firm that we've been helping with PPP loans, we have actually asked them, we've drafted for them, but asked the client to sign a representation letter as to why they felt that they were in need of paycheck protection money. And the rules for need are pretty loose. I mean, they're not like the employee retention tax credit where you had to show specific decreases in revenues quarter to, to the prior year quarter. So they were definitely up for argument, but I think that needs to be documented. And I don't even think, I had quite a few clients that borrowed money under the program, Eric, that they didn't actually need it now, but, listen, I'm running a business. Most of us are, in the 25 years I've been running my business, I've never seen such uncertainty, ahead of us right now, besides these rising cases, potential more shutdowns, a plummeting of the economy, and honestly, a presidential election where, the incumbent president, we're more uncertain about what he'll do in the next 4 years than his opponents. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and I don't judge my clients for borrowing money because they feel that they're going to need the money, the resources in the months to come because of all of this. And if that's the choice that they make and how they're justifying it, I've been asking them to document that, to write it down and sign off on it, because I think that might be needed if questions are ever asked in the future.
Well said, and that's exactly what we've been saying. Just document it and be ready with clear statements of intent. So thanks, Gene. We'll be back to you in a little bit. What I want to do now is hand this over to Mark just to talk about the new guidance, and maybe you'll have a better prediction on when those FAQs are coming out. So, Mark?
I'm done predicting, Eric. It's been a whirlwind of a couple of weeks. We thought this was going to happen. Weren't we talking about it somewhere around Memorial Day and then July 4th? And now here we are, July 9th, and still waiting on additional FAQs and definitions around what to do with the forgiveness application. I guess the easier thing now and what may be somewhat of relief to our CPA members is that each day that there is not an FAQ that hits the street is another day we can focus on this July 15 deadline. Here we are, July 9. It's not going to matter much. We'll be lucky there will be any of the banks ready by July 15th to be up and running and start accepting. But we'll talk about, what we should really be focusing on today in a little bit. Because it definitely is not getting forgiveness applications out the door as quickly as we possibly can. We're going to need some time to really digest all the information that's there, and earlier isn't going to always be better in this scenario. So I will say as of literally 2 minutes ago, there were no additional FAQs on the Treasury website, so we can move on from this slide and talk about other topics and other guidance that has been coming out and other questions really, not around forgiveness per se itself, but interaction of the PPP program for not-for-profits, those 501c3s who may be getting additional federal money or getting additional state money. This has been coming up more and more every day. And while we talk about double dipping and being able to receive the PPP funding, getting it forgiven, and still deducting the expense for standard corporations on their income tax return, it is going to be a very different story inside of any type of federal, state, or local governmental awards that not-for-profits receive. Generally speaking, you will not be able to take both the expenses that were reimbursed through the PPP and get reimbursement through any type of federal, state, or local program. Now, this is a general oversight. There may be some exceptions to that, but from what we're seeing currently, we have state attorney generals, state governors who are all singing the same tune right now to say that even their state programs, they do not expect to be reimbursing not-for-profits with state money or even a federal flow-through if they receive PPP funds for the same purpose. So it's going to be important accounting on what the PPP funds were used for versus what other awards reimburse for salary and payroll and the like. And these not-for-profits are going to need coaching from their CPAs like no other to really get through that process. If we go to the next slide, Eric, we can talk about then other pieces of guidance that we've provided from AICPA, and this is really geared around talking about some of the accounting-related issues. And so if you look and you see the links that are here, we have some FAQs around state and local government financial statement accounting and auditing matters and the reporting of such. And then through the GAQC, our Government Audit Quality Center, we have a bunch of COVID-19 related resources. They're going to keep up on this conversation also, by the way. The GAQC has been getting a lot of questions around it, and we would fully anticipate that continuing. So it could be something that we do a slightly deeper dive. You know, June 30th is a popular year end for many not-for-profits. So here we come as the auditors. We're going to be getting in there, and there's going to be some of those year-end audit issues that we're going to have to deal with in the very near future. If we go to the next slide. And this is what some of what we were talking about. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa, our ultimate PPP loan application and forgiveness expert. And Lisa, what should we be focusing on right now, and what are the lenders talking about?
Thanks, Mark. We were on a call today with several of the larger lenders, and they're basically saying, just wait. They are building portals so that the loan forgiveness process will be a simpler administrative process for both the borrower and the lender. And they're not really ready to finalize their portals because they're still waiting on guidance from Treasury and SBA, just like we are. So just be patient, and we'll let them get their technology systems up and running to make it simpler for everyone. And kind of like Mark's been saying the last couple of weeks, don't be in a big hurry to apply. If you are a fiscal year-end taxpayer, you might be in more of a hurry, but if not, then just let's wait and let some of the processes play out. A reminder on our call today that borrowers aren't going to be asked to make payments on their loans until at least until they've applied for forgiveness, or if their application for forgiveness isn't in within 10 months after the end of their covered period, then payments would be due. They are also interested in seeing how many borrowers are going to be able to use that EZ application. A large part of our conversation today was around documentation and what a borrower should be maintaining within their records, even if they don't have to submit things like the Schedule A worksheet to the borrower or to the lender. They at least need to be maintaining that documentation. So that's what we're hearing from our lender community. I did get a note in the Q&A that one community bank has already been telling everyone, telling a borrower that they're ready for the borrower to submit their application for forgiveness. But on our call today, the conversation was around the SBA not having their system set up just quite yet to accept the application for forgiveness from the lender. So again, let's just wait a little bit. What we wanted to cover next at a very quick speed is some of the refresher slides that we included in our town hall last week. Although I think you should be with us every week, you can't always make it. So we just wanted to make sure that you know these are the topics that you're going to find in the slides, or you can revisit last week's town hall in our archived version. So last week we talked about some high-level information on borrowers and what the covered period options are if your loan date was prior to June 5th or if your loan was June 5th or later. Also talked about loan terms and the conversation we just had about applying for forgiveness. And then on the next slide, we talked about applying for forgiveness before the end of the covered period. That is a very hot topic, and we looked at how a borrower could do that if, in light of them having a salary and hourly wage reduction. And the answer is yes, they can. And then the next slide will give you an example of how that actually will work, how you'll do the math on that. So any reduction, again, this is on an employee by employee basis, will be extrapolated through the end of the covered period, but the borrower can go ahead and apply and take that reduction in their loan forgiveness. Next slide is about the FTE reduction safe harbor. We are still waiting for some guidance on that in our conversations and in our readings of the interim final. We expect that a lot of borrowers who've been impacted by restrictions on operations, so they've been forced to shut down because they are a nail salon, or they've been really limited in their operations because of their restaurant, that they'll be able to take the FTE safe harbor and may still be able to apply early for forgiveness. But we want some, hopefully we'll get some good examples on that. There are FTE reduction exceptions within the guidance, so you'll see some of the details on that. And if you do take any of these employee by employee reduction exceptions, you'll need to maintain documentation in your files for that. And then the next slide talks about the actual safe harbors, which I equate to almost as good as a tax credit. They are going to be kind of blanket forgiveness for any reduction in your FTEs. And so you've got the one that we just talked about with operating restrictions, and then the one around restoring headcount by the end of the covered period or December 31. So again, we'll hope that we get some good examples in the FAQs for how to implement those. Here's an example of the operating restriction safe harbor. Again, we do expect that SBA has positive intent on allowing many borrowers to be able to use that safe harbor. And then this is another hot topic of conversation, already seeing these questions come through the slides. So payroll caps for loan forgiveness are based on two things: what your covered period is, whether it's 8 weeks or 24, and whether you're talking about an owner employee or a non-owner employee. So there are your compensation caps. Let's say that you've got a 24-week covered period and you decide that you've used up all your PPP funds at week 15 and you want to apply for forgiveness early. Your compensation limit is $46,154 for non-owner employees and $20,833 if you've got an owner employee. So I know that's been confusing for some, but hopefully just keeping that in mind will help make your decisions about applying early. We've also had lots of questions about non-cash compensation for owners, so you'll see the summary information there. And if we go to, this is just a quick look at the forgiveness application forms. So just some general highlights there that you'll want to make sure that you're aware of. The next slide is our forgiveness calculator. And again, I know we're going through this quickly, but the slides are there for your reference. Last week's town hall covered some of these. Once we get all of our FAQs and that slide way in the beginning with our top questions that we're waiting answers on is resolved, then we'll start running our examples through the calculator and go through those in more detail in further town halls. Next slide.
Well, Lisa, that was great summary, and I'm sure a lot of people were taking some notes, but our goal there was just to make the whole audience aware of all of those good summary slides and to leverage them as they think through how to advise their clients in the forgiveness process. But right now, what's the most, and Lisa started off the discussion with this, is there are going to be sophisticated tools that help you walk through everything that Lisa just covered. They're going to be complete integrated PPP forgiveness tools. We're actually working on having the AICPA forgiveness calculator work with a fintech app that would enable the filling out of the 3058 or the 3058EZ, following, going through all of those steps, those different permutations related to FTE calculations and safe harbors, and helping, and in determining, not just helping, determining the forgiveness amount, allowing for the upload of the payroll compliance reports, the other source documents related to the non-payroll data, and then doing the digital signature and giving you a downloadable file. And there's even going to be tools that have CPA consoles so you could help manage multiple clients. With that said, there's also going to be lender solutions. So we all need to get the final guidance so we can complete our forgiveness calculator, and then these integrated tools can get completed. So just be aware that they're coming. They will be in the marketplace before the end of July. So with that, I want to kind of get back into a discussion with Gene on some more broad strategic advisory discussions. And Gene, you and I have had an opportunity to connect a few times over the past couple of weeks, and you shared with me some of these key lessons learned that you've identified. So I'll let you expand upon those.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, this has been, quite an event that we've been going through, but I can tell you that Eric, there has never been a better time to be a financial advisor, a CPA for your clients than it is now. And I want to say first and foremost that all of this forgiveness stuff, it irks me a little bit because it's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape and a lot of things that we have to do. And you know what, Eric, it kind of marginalizes us. Once again, we're the accountants that have to step in and fill out the forms and kind of like we're doing with the tax returns that we do. And there are other opportunities and things we can be doing for our clients right now that can really help them make money and grow their businesses and provide much more of a value than just the person that comes out and fills out the forgiveness application. I mean, and I'd like to talk about a few. I mean, one of them, Eric, first of all, the Section 7A loans is a perfect example. And I don't know how deeply you guys covered this in the past, but as part of the CARES Act, and I've written about this in a few places, there was a provision made for the SBA's Section 7A loans. Now, not to insult anyone's intelligence, but if you don't know what these are, they're very, very common and the most popular loans that are given by the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and they're given to small businesses. And you can borrow money from the SBA really for any purposes. You can borrow it for real estate, you can borrow it for working capital, you can borrow it to buy another business, to buy equipment. They all have different maturities. They all have very competitive interest rates. But because of the CARES Act, if a company decides to borrow under the Section 7A loan program and closes the loan before September 27th, then the first 6 months of their loan payments and interest and principal are forgiven, which means if you borrow $500,000, you do not have to pay $33,000. This is not like a deferral. It's just complete forgiveness. So a lot of businesses don't know about this. And it's a program that you can use. You can, as a financial advisor, if you make your clients aware of this, you can help guide them through the process, introduce them to an SBA banker, work with them to get the documentation, and identify what you would use the funds for. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit about M&A because you can certainly use it for that, but buying that piece of equipment or buying some real estate or just putting some cash on hand, which you might need, who knows, in the next few months, it's an enormous service that you could be providing for your clients, and many small businesses are not aware of it. And one other thing, if they use these proceeds and they use to buy equipment, I mean, there's Section 179 deduction they can take this year as long as they put it into service. So there's huge advantages for your clients, and I just think as CPAs look into the Section 7A loans and how they apply under the CARES Act is one enormous opportunity that I think we all have.
Well, thanks, Gina.
One
thing that, what's that?
I've got more, but I just wanted to pause.
Yeah. We want to get more out of you here, so a lot of good insights. I mean, when you think about this, and we were talking about this earlier, this disruption here and the amount of entrepreneurialism that's going to happen over the coming months,
right,
where businesses that are looking at the abyss are going to be like, okay, I'm going to get out of this, and they're going to get creative. And then there's businesses that have actually some resources, and they're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It was something I was writing about as well today. I mean, there are a lot of businesses, Eric, that did not take advantage of the PPP loans, and the reason why they didn't is because they didn't need to. There are a lot of companies that are essential businesses. They were still running themselves even through this. There are a lot of companies that actually prospered because of the pandemic: cleaning services, grocery stores, online businesses, people that sell puzzles and games even some takeout places I've seen it prosper. There are plenty of businesses in this country that have done okay through all this. Plus, there are plenty of business owners that I know, smart people that have been running their businesses for a long time, that understand the value of cash. And boy, have we learned that lesson during this pandemic. And, we all advise our clients to be keeping cash on hand. I've been telling my clients for years, you should have 4 to 6 months of operating cash availability between cash and lines of credit for who knows what's going to happen. And, here we go. So those companies that have cash in any economic downturn, there are some opportunities for them to reap. One huge one, for example, is labor disruption. I mean, it was just like a few months ago, our biggest problem was finding good people. And our clients' biggest problem was exactly this. The number one issue among small and medium-sized businesses was finding good people. Now, all of a sudden, we've got like 20 million people unemployed. And many people will be going back to their original jobs, but Eric, many people will not be. And when there's disruption, there's opportunity. And, for those companies that have some extra capital on hand, now is the time to snap up some smart, good talent for your company, because that business is going to come back and you can position yourself for that growth. And as a financial advisor, that's the kind of advice that you can be giving, and you can help them even find those employees. Maybe you've got referrals. Maybe they can dig into your network. Maybe you can assist them through an industry association or any of the LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter. But that's like something like, again, a lot of business owners are so busy with their day-to-day thing, it's an opportunity for you to help them. So I mentioned the Section 7A loans. I think labor disruption is yet another big opportunity that we can capitalize on. And I've got more.
You got more, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Mark Koziel into this discussion. We had another slide, which some of the points you've been mentioning were on this slide, and we've got I'll let the audience read this great quote from you about economic downturns, but I'm going to ask Mark Koziel to join us. And Mark, I know Gene's comment resonated with you about being an advisor versus an accountant. So why don't you just kind of share your thinking, because we've been living this for 14 weeks here on the town halls, as you think about evolving from the business relief focus and understanding all this guidance to really stepping up and playing that trusted advisor role over the second half of 2020.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. It's such an interesting time. It is, the opportunity is here now to really be that trusted advisor, whether we're doing client accounting services or we're in a tax situation or even doing audit for that matter. There are opportunities for us to work with our clients differently. You've said now quite a bit, that in 100 days we've solidified 10 plus years of relationships. And it's just amazing. Now, with the advent of technology, with easy-to-use CRM systems out there and email and the like, there's opportunities for us to stay connected with our client in a different way, give them an update on the PPP. You're listening to these town halls, just say, look, you know what, my profession is all over this thing called PPP and forgiveness. What I can tell you today is we have to be patient here. I am thinking about your business each and every day. But with the minute we're ready to start working on that forgiveness, I'm going to reach back out to you. And whether that's an weekly or a monthly email, just to stay connected. And we've seen this with the examples, Eric, that you've provided with some of the practitioners we've brought to this town hall and how they're communicating differently with their clients, whether they had prospects that they went out and offered to help with the application or forgiveness to create new lines of services around that. It's a new day. It's a new day on how we're going to interact with our clients. They don't have to show up to our office. This virtual environment is here to stay. So let's take advantage of all these things and really remodel our business, us as CPAs, manage our client anxiety in a different way, and really move forward.
Hey, Mark, that's great. So some great insights. Gene, how would you start this discussion? So say we've got a few thousand people online with us today, and
Sure.
They haven't had this discussion yet. How do you kick it off with the client?
I mean, that's easy. When you're talking to your clients, you know, they look at us as the people that have to do compliance, like a necessary overhead, even with forgiveness. So you don't want to talk about that. What you want to talk about is some ideas to make them money. And when you're looking at your clients, you have to say, listen, you know, we've come through this. Here we are. We're looking forward. I've got some thoughts for you as to how you can grow your business. There's some potential real opportunities out there that you should be looking very closely at, and I can help you with some of those opportunities. And your client's going to be like, well, what kind of opportunities do you mean? I spoke about two of them, and you know, again, the Section 7A loans for financing and the labor disruption. But here's a few more. I mean, for example, and you've got this on the slide, but you know, M&A. If you go to a site called BizBuySell, BizBuySell, it's a giant online marketplace with a lot of resources for people that are buying and selling businesses. And their volume has been way up. And when I speak to the people there, there's a huge amount of interest in companies now looking to sell and potential buyers looking to buy. Because again, economic downturns create disruptions. There is a large population of boomers. The average age of the U.S. small business owner is about 52 years old. There are many. They're not like the hip people in San Francisco and New York. It's a big country. And there are people, older people, boomer generation people, that frankly want out. They have been running their businesses for years. They've been thinking about selling or retiring for a while. And frankly, this pandemic has almost been like the final straw for many. And that's a great opportunity for somebody looking to buy a competitor or another, related business. It's a great opportunity for a young entrepreneur. Why start a business from scratch when you can buy into an existing business? And there is a big supply of people that want to sell their companies right now. Interest rates are at historic lows. Inflation is very low. The stock market is incredibly unstable. Why even put your money there? You don't know where it's going to go. Wouldn't you want more control over it? And even right now, capital gains rates are still low. Who knows where that's going to go, depending on how the elections turn out in November. So I know where it's going to go if Biden gets elected. So it's a good time to sell a business, and it's a great time for a financial advisor to put that idea in their client's head and help them hunt down, find some business to buy, and help them with the transaction. And by the way, if you don't want to buy a whole business, it's a great time to buy real estate and a great time to buy equipment, because when there are economic downturns, these things get created, and there are distressed business owners and distressed people that they need to unload. And, harsh as that sounds, like, the strong shall survive. And if your clients do have some extra capital, that's another suggestion you should be making. You should be pushing them towards various auction sites and local equipment selling sites, used equipment that's in the area, taking them out, or taking on that responsibility, and helping them purchase some inventory, equipment, or even real estate, and help them through that transaction. That's that's not compliance. That is business building. That is like making your clients money. And these are specific things that you can do with them right now to help them do just that. And while I'm on a roll, you've got on the slide, Eric, about bankruptcy. And I know that, obviously it's a tough word, but, just by coincidence, the Small Business Reorganization Act became effective back in February. And what that means is there's now new Chapter 11 legislation which enables smaller companies to file for reorganization under Chapter 11 much more easily. Less bureaucracy, less costs. A lot of their personal assets are no longer in jeopardy. It's eased the burden for them to file for Chapter 11. And I get it. There's PR issues and rebuilding your credit and all of that. But I have a handful of clients that are strongly considering doing this as a strategy, because it's not as if they want to go out of business. They need some time to breathe, and they're as scared as the rest of us about the next 6 months. And they look at the Small Business Reorganization Act as an opportunity for them to sort of stop, reorganize, renegotiate their debts, make their plans, take a breather, and restart and emerge maybe in January of 2021. That's another area where they need a good CPA to help them through that. And it's something that maybe your clients want to consider. It's just super valuable stuff. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to demean this, but filling out forms for forgiveness is not valuable to business owners. It's a headache that they're delegating, to a CPA to do. But that's not creating long-term value. What's creating long-term value is going into them with these ideas and then helping them execute these ideas. That's what good CPAs should be doing with their clients.
Well, Gene, a lot of powerful ideas there. And one thing that we've stated from the beginning here was it was stepping back and looking at the many relief options. So, and then executing on that relief option. In many cases, it was the PPP program. So that was the first step. Have that broad discussion. What is the right relief option, and then getting that right relief option done well and accurately and not producing a lot of anxiety. I think a lot of the topics you've just raised, those are things that I think in the coming weeks and months we will probably unpack further, because these are things that the trusted advisors, the firms, need to be doing with their clients. And there's going to be lots of business creation, lots of business models changing. It's such a dynamic time, and in America there's so much ingenuity and entrepreneurialism. It's going to be really impressive to see what does happen over the coming months. So great comments. What we will, as I said, we will be talking more about employee retention credit next week. We can get more into some of these 7A loans. I saw some questions coming in. So with this, Lisa, let's just take a couple of questions that we've seen come in from the group here. So I see a lot of positive comments on the commentary that we just had. Lisa?
Thanks, Eric. We are getting a lot of questions about SBA 7A as in Apple loans, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knows we've got some resources available for you at AICPA.org/SBA. There is an accordion plus sign there under funding resources. If you click on that little plus sign, you'll find a chart that goes through different SBA loan options, and you will also find a snapshot that can be client-facing or that can just be informational for you about some 7A options and other SBA provisions as well. Gina, I did have a question for you about, I can't remember how long the SBA is making payments. I know it's 6 months, but there's an end date, right?
So yeah, so the different SBA loans, by the way, first of all, you've got to get this deal done by September 27th. Senator Cardin, I spoke to him just last week, is one of the proponents behind this bill. He's trying to get this extended beyond September 27th. But just for now, you got to get it closed before then. And depending on the loan, they have different maturity dates. So a working capital loan is like 5 years, and equipment loan is like 7 years, and real estate is 20 years, things like that. So each, depending on the purpose of the loan, you'll have a different maturity date. But regardless of the maturity date, the first 6 months, completely forgiven.
Yeah. And Jean, could you also say again the website that you were talking about on where businesses are for sale?
Yes. It's called BizBuySell, BIZBUYSELL, and it's a giant marketplace and resource content place for anybody looking to buy or sell a business. I've been going to them for years, and it's a wonderful resource.
Thank you.
Well, great, Jean. I think on both of these, Lisa, on the more details, we'll get a slide or two on the 7A loan for the next town hall, and more about these other opportunities. So, Jean, the passion that you spoke about here on really stepping up and being that strategic advisor and leveraging all of the financial and business skills that this audience has, I think, has been excellent today. So thanks. I'm going to move through our final slides here now. One other thing I'll just highlight.
Eric,
yeah, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Sorry, I just want to, because there's a lot of questions coming in about 7A loans. 7A loans have been around forever. There are plenty of banks who are doing it. 7A is the program in which PPP fell under, but PPP runs very different from a 7A loan. People are asking, do I do the EIDL? Do I do a 7A? And Jean, just to get perspective on this, I just want to kind of put it to bed because there's a lot out there on this. EIDL is going to be way easier to apply for than a 7A loan. 7A loans take a long time, takes a lot of information, and Main Street Lending or an EIDL may be the better options. Jean?
If I can just say, the EIDL loan, remember, is a 30-year maturity, and it is at a fixed rate as well. So depending on where interest rates could go, it could be a great deal for you. I mean, again, a $75,000 loan is like $350 a month that you would have to pay over 30 years. It's kind of peanuts. So yes, the EIDL is definitely good. The Section 7A loan, the SBA Section 7A loan, Mark, you're right, program's been around for a long, long time. So you still have to go through due diligence with the bank. But when you get it, your first 6 months of payment are completely forgiven. That's not the case under an EIDL loan. And by the way, you can get them both. You can get them both.
So we'll maybe update that chart to include 7A as well as EIDL. That chart was more on the business relief. So one thing I just want to highlight for everyone, thanks, Mark, for raising that important point with all those questions coming in on that. You've got our social media handles here: Eric Auskerson, Mark Koziel, Jean Marks, and Lisa Simpson. A lot of this information is real time. We communicate it regularly, so leverage Twitter. It's an important resource in this dynamic time. And one thing I'll say, we've got other questions coming in. This is not a political show. There's no political commentary going on here. And Jean was just stating this uncertainty in an election year, and based on uncertainty, another reason to have discussions with your clients. So moving on to just talking a little bit about some of our resources here. You should know this page by now, AICPA.org/SBA. It has all of the information we've talked about today. It has links to the archive town hall series, so leverage that. We also have a broader coronavirus tax resource center, which has a lot of valuable information. And we have some deeper dive webcasts that are occurring. You can find these on the AICPA store site, and here's the titles for the ones coming up over the next couple of weeks. And as we said, we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of the other relief programs next week. So with that, I just would like to wrap up and thank all of you for your time today. We greatly appreciate being with you. We learn a lot. This is a dynamic discussion. We love the questions that are submitted. We appreciate the survey that you do at the end. So let's stay in touch. We will have another town hall next Thursday at 3 p.m. And I do think we're going to be talking about the FAQs. And we also have a special guest next week with us, leading pricing and firm strategist Ron Baker. I think he's going to have a lot of great insights, just like Jean did today. So, Gene, I want to thank you again. Thank you for all you're doing for Business America and the CPA profession. Great having you.
Thank you.
And also, Mark and Lisa, great having you here today, and the broader team that helps us put on this event. Thank you. So please do give us feedback with the survey form, and we look forward to being with you hopefully next week. Thank you.